having me. My name is Jacob Soltera. I'm here representing Voter Choice Massachusetts. We are a nonpartisan organization. We advocate for better electoral systems that work to make better elections and fairer outcomes for everyone. So, just by a show of hands, who thinks that entrenched one-party rule is good for democracy? Who thinks it's bad for democracy? All right, I'm glad we're on the same page here. So, first I'm going to talk to you about the problem and lay it out in glorious detail before I explain how our solution makes everything so much better. And it's best explained by an example. So this is the Pennsylvania 18th District. This was a special election in March, just a couple months ago. The Democratic candidate was Connor Lamb. The Republican candidate was Rick Saccone. And this was a very heavily watched race all over the country. It's looking, it's a purple district, it's Pennsylvania. People are thinking, oh my God, is this going to be an indicator for the midterms in November? And so what happens? Connor Lamb wins by 0.33% of the vote. Very, very close. In fact, it was a 755 vote difference. But neither of these candidates got a majority of the vote. How can that happen that the winner doesn't get a majority? Well, because there was a third candidate, Drew Miller of the Libertarian Party. So did anybody here used to be a Libertarian? I assume you're all Republicans now. How do people feel about the Libertarian Party?
A little out there.
A lot of silence. Okay. Well, Drew Miller, he's running for office. He's getting his message out there, and he's got 1,381 votes. A small number compared to the 114,000, 113,000 of the two major party candidates, but more than the difference between them. And he knew this was going to happen. Oh, this is a problem. Well, all right. So Drew Miller tweeted before the results had fully come in, "We're only a few hours away from me being the most hated man in America." Because he knew what was happening. He knew he was acting as a spoiler. He knew that his presence in the race had cost Republicans the election, even though he had no chance of winning. And he was right. So, the New York Conservative responds in a colorful fashion. I hope this is all right. I censored some of the more colorful stuff.
Thank you.
And, people are pretty angry at this guy, except not the liberal advance. They thought it was great. Because it ended up leading to the Democrat winning. Another way to look at it, more people wanted not Connor Lamb to win 50.1%, but somehow he still won. This is not isolated. So this is data from Mike Ridgway, who has put together a lot of other elections in which a Democrat won without a majority. Something that stuck out to me is this Franken race in 2008. This is really neck and neck between Franken and Coleman. I don't even know what the vote difference was here. Less than 0.1%. Dean Barkley's over here with 15% of the vote. But hey, under plurality voting, whoever gets the most votes wins, even if it's not a majority. A lot of these people are still in office, by the way. So the 6th District, 2012, John Tierney, he had some scandals recently. Richard Tizay, a challenger, and then Dan Fishman, the Libertarian. Similar idea. Tierney comes in with a 48% of the vote, very respectable, not a majority. Richard Tizay at 47%, slightly less, also not a majority, and Dan Fishman at 5%. Again, Fishman had no chance of winning this election, but his presence, Libertarians, a lot of them would be voting for the Republican. They have a similar message, small government, low taxes, and so it's likely that if Fishman had not been in this race, that Richard Tizay would have won. But because Fishman was in the race, John Tierney won. It boggles the mind. Third example, House election in Massachusetts 10th. This was even more extreme. There were 4 candidates here, Keating the Democrat, Jeff Perry a Republican, and 2 independent candidates who were running in a more, on a more conservative platform. And collectively, you know, this is not nothing. This is 10% of the vote. That's double the 5% between Keating and Perry. So it's a little strange how these 2 candidates, even though again they're distant third and fourth, somehow have so much power over the outcome. Going into a higher office, the gubernatorial election 2010, Democrat incumbent Deval Patrick running for re-election, Charlie Baker coming in, and Tim Cahill running as an independent. People, even before this election, you know, a lot of people were speculating, is Tim Cahill a straw? He's an independent, there's really no way he can win, but it's entirely possible he had a more right-leaning platform that he's gonna pull votes away from Baker, leading to a Patrick victory. Even his running mate found out about some of these shenanigans. You know, Luskoko alleged that a Patrick aide had coordinated with the Cahill campaign, that there was some shady dealings going on. And you wonder why this happens. Why does a more right-leaning candidate, why is his campaign coordinating with the Democrats' campaign? I mean, there was a lot of mudslinging going on here, so who knows what really happened, but Luskoko was making some pretty hefty accusations. And it's reasonable. Deval Patrick did not get a majority. He only got 48% of the vote. And Tim Cahill over there with, again, a respectable 8% of the vote, more than the difference between Patrick and Baker. So we really don't know what the people of Massachusetts wanted. We don't know whether they wanted Deval Patrick or Charlie Baker to win this election. We know that more people voted for not Deval Patrick than not Charlie Baker. But because of our plurality system, Deval Patrick won the election. Now, I've shown a bunch of examples here. I think they illustrate the point, but you might wonder if I'm just, you know, cherry picking this. Are these rare? Are these just weird outliers? And they're really not. So, you know, the Senate's a little bit more stable. Only 11% of elections result in a non-majority winner. But even governor, more than half of gubernatorial elections, the winner does not have a majority. Attorney General at 40%, and District Attorney, a staggering 86% of these races, the winner does not get a majority of the vote. Upcoming Republican primary, you know, there's 3 good candidates. We can pretty much guarantee there's going to be vote splitting happening. And in fact, I believe it was the Kingston campaign, it was alleged that they asked Beth Lindstrom to drop out of the race. They're worried about this vote splitting happening. And this happens every cycle. We know how the plurality system works. We know that it's vulnerable to this type of thing. But why are we preventing our citizens from running for office when they have every right to? So, I don't know entirely how the November election is going to shape out. You know, there's Elizabeth Warren, the incumbent, defending her seat, and then there's going to be Shiva Ayyadurai is running as an independent, possibly Gabriel Gomez too. There will be a Republican nominee, whoever they are, and maybe even more independents. And, you know, Warren has a solid base, but anybody running against her is running on a somewhat anti-Warren ticket. They have to be. And so all of these candidates are going to be splitting up the anti-Warren vote. Our plurality system is spoiled. It doesn't guarantee majority winners. It doesn't eliminate the spoiler effect. It discourages candidates from running. It limits our choice in the voting booth, and it rewards negative campaigning. The solution? Ranked choice voting. Instead of just voting for one candidate, you get to vote for multiple candidates in the order you prefer them. So you can flip over your handouts. I should have handed them out the other way. And you can just see a simple ballot there. There's 3 candidates, and you've got 3 choices. Also up here, there's a sample ballot from the League of Women Voters. Everything on this screen is what people need to know. Rank candidates in order of preference. There's there's 3 candidates running here, first choice, second choice, and third choice. Whatever your preference are, you fill in first choice for whoever your first choice candidate is, either 1, 2, or 3. Then the next choice, then the next choice. So you fill in 1 bubble in the row, 1 bubble in the column. Also important to note, ranking a second or third choice candidate will not hurt your first choice vote. Your first choice candidate, excuse me. So once you've got a first choice vote, and then you get a series of backup votes. So if your first choice candidate doesn't win, if they get eliminated, your vote transfers to your second choice. So we can go through an example of this and how it works. The first thing that happens, just count up the first choice votes. And the guiding principle here is that whoever wins should have a majority. So here, we've got dark yellow, dark purple, light yellow. Dark yellow has a majority, 55%. So what happens? They win, majority in the first round. Second example, a little bit more complicated. Nobody has a majority in this first round here. We've got dark yellow at 40%, dark purple at 35%, light purple at 20%, and light yellow at 5%. So what happens is the lowest vote getter gets eliminated. And their votes transfer instantly to their second choice. So in this example, I'm assuming that all of these light yellow voters had dark yellow as their second choice. And you see they get bumped up. But still, nobody has a majority. So what do? Just the same thing over again. We drop the lowest vote getter, light purple, those votes transfer. And we see that dark purple here now has a majority. And more people wanted dark purple to win than wanted dark yellow, and that's exactly what happened. How does that sit with everybody? Do you want to walk through it one more time? Who wants to walk through it one more time?
I'll volunteer.
One? Who is so incredibly bored that they would hate to walk through it one more time? Alright. So I'm gonna play, this video I'm gonna play is from the city of Minneapolis where they actually use it. And it was an educational video made for voters.
Called ranked choice voting. Here's an example of how it works. All of the candidates will be listed on the ballot in 3 columns. Make your first choice vote in column 1 by filling in the oval of the candidate you'd most like to win. Vote for your second choice in column 2, and make your third choice in column 3. That's all there is to it. Now let's see how the votes are counted. Let's say there are 4 candidates running for mayor: Asha, Zach, Omar, and Lucy. Once the polls close, we count all the first choice votes first. To be elected mayor, a candidate needs more than half the votes. In this example, Asha has more than half of the votes, so she's declared the winner. However, if no candidate gets more than half the votes, we start eliminating candidates and counting the next choices of those who voted. In this example, Zach is the candidate with the smallest number of first choice votes, so he is cut. We use the second choice votes on Zach's ballots and count those voters' second choices instead. If one of the remaining candidates now has more than half of the total votes, that candidate is declared the winner. If not, the next lowest candidate, Lucy, is eliminated. Her votes are now counted for the next choice on the ballot. Some of Lucy's votes went to Zach, who was already eliminated, so those new votes for Zach instead count for those voters' third choice candidate. We are now down to 2 candidates, and Omar clearly has more than half of the votes. That makes him the winner.
So does that make sense?
Yes.
It does.
Alright. I'll stop here for any questions. Yeah.
I take it this is only used right now in cities? It's not used by any particular state?
We'll get to that.
Okay.
It's a little bit of a mixed bag, that answer. For the most part, there's about a dozen cities that use it. Yes.
In your travels, doing your presentations, have any people mentioned any negatives to you about this?
People mention a lot of negatives. They're usually not great objections. I mean, obviously, I've made up my mind. I'm a little bit biased. And that's a pretty common question I get from people. Are there any drawbacks? I'm going to walk through a little bit more of the things. The only drawback I can think of is elections cost a little bit more to run. You can often end up saving that money elsewhere by running fewer elections. So it's a little bit debatable.
Okay, thank you.
How would that be, running fewer elections? I mean, if you've got a 4-year term for governor, you got a 4-year term for governor, this isn't going to change that. You're still going to have the same number, right?
Right. So an example, this doesn't apply for state elections in Massachusetts, but for city elections, if there's a preliminary, if there's more than 2 candidates, more than double the number of candidates running for an office, then they have a preliminary election.
Right.
With ranked choice voting, you would not need to hold a preliminary election.
Right. So you don't have any runoff elections after the fact because
Right.
nobody made it to 50%.
Right.
Got it.
Right.
Yep, that's true.
It's also called an instant runoff system. You
Sure.
do the whole thing just in one election.
Yep. One other negative that I could think of, and it may not in fact really be a negative, but it's the idea of right now people are accustomed to picking who they think is their favorite candidate out of the mix, and once you feel confident about that pick, that's it. You don't have to research any further. So if there's 17 candidates in the presidential Republican event, look, I know this guy's my top one, or maybe you'd say 2 or 3, and you're evaluating, but you don't have to go deep. You don't have to try and rank all 17 of them. You just know who your number 1 person is, and that's it. That's an extreme. But even in an example like 4, it's like, I know who my top person is. I don't know who I would pick as maybe number 2, 3, or 4. You might know who your top 2 are, but you're not going to bother researching the bottom 3 if you don't think they even have a chance.
Right.
Now, with this, you actually would really want to give that some thought.
So to me, that sounds like a good thing. I mean, because you are able to express your voice if you want to.
Yep.
You don't have to. If
Right.
you only want to vote for one person, if you just want to rank the first choice, that's all you have to do. You
Right.
don't have to rank anymore.
That's
You
on
can
you.
rank,
Mhm.
you can rank first, you can rank, if there's 10 candidates and you only want to rank 3, that's totally fine.
Yep. I would wonder whether or not, again, just knowing the electorate, some
Yeah.
people don't show up, some people don't give it an awful lot of thought, some people just put, vote for the guy with the R or the D, right? And I wonder if people would start getting to the point of like, oh, I'll just start picking stuff, and they just rank, and then you start getting into now somebody that didn't have a shot, all of a sudden, they potentially could start moving up in the patterns. If you had a really close race, if it's split roughly a third, a third, and a third, all of a
Right.
sudden, this person who didn't make it to 40%,
Right.
now all of a sudden, because in the second round, he's made it to 50% because of that second chance that he
Yeah,
gets.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Definitely possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so, as an example, we can revisit that Pennsylvania election, the 18th district. A libertarian voter could have voted for Drew Miller as their first choice and Rick Sacconi as their second choice. So they're still able to express themselves. They're still able to vote, for their favorite guy in the world. But okay, if he can't win, on the off chance that the libertarian doesn't win the election, then their vote can transfer to Rick Sacconi, the Republican. And so did anybody here go to the GOP convention, the Massachusetts one?
Yep.
Okay. I was there too, and they do this kind of runoff system for electing, for choosing endorsements. And Pennsylvania, they do the same thing. It's not a instant runoff; it's a multi-round runoff. And it's kind of funny because Rick Sacconi was actually behind in that first round of voting, but then came up ahead once Kim Ward was eliminated. So there is, there's precedent for doing this among the nomination process. But with, that voting process, it takes hours and hours. You've got these multiple rounds.
Terrible.
Obviously, you cannot do that in a public election. We can't have people showing up to vote day after day after day. With ranked choice voting, you get it all done in just one ballot. And so it eliminates spoilers, it encourages more people to run, it incentivizes more positive campaigns, gives voters more choice and more voice, transform politics. So to your question, Maine became the first state in US history to use this November 8th, 2016. They will be holding their first ranked choice election a week from today. So it's going to be used for their primaries that are for the general election coming up.
And I imagine that you'll be following that closely
Oh,
to see
very
where the
closely.
pitfalls are.
Yes, we are following it very closely. We're a little bit nervous, biting our fingernails about it. But you know, there's precedent for this. It's used in about a dozen cities all across the U.S. Millions of people vote using this system. San Francisco, Minneapolis, others in the Bay Area. Portland, Maine was already using it before the state of Maine switched over. Santa Fe, that was interesting. Santa Fe passed it in 2009, and only in February did they actually implement it. The legislature was dragging their heels, and the court finally said, look, enough is enough. This is the law. You have to use ranked choice voting. It's used all over the world, in fact. Australia has been using it for 100 years. Ireland has been using it for at least 30. So, you know, running an election is always challenging, but we know these elections can be run successfully. It's used for Best Picture for the Oscars. It's used in a lot of colleges and universities to elect their officials. It's used for many professional organizations. So I mentioned campaign civility a couple times. We've all seen the mudslinging, the candidates, their attack ads, making nasty remarks about each other. And I don't think anybody really likes it. I certainly don't. But they still do it. Year after year, they always do it. And why? Because when there's only two choices, a candidate will still make themselves look bad as long as it makes the other candidate look worse. But with RCV, and we've seen this happen in San Francisco and in Minneapolis, where campaigns actually are more collaborative, candidates try to be nice to each other because they may not get the first choice votes of their opponents' supporters, but they're still angling for those second choice votes. Has anybody here done door knocking, canvassing for campaigns? So, you know, imagine if you're campaigning under a plurality system. Let's say you're campaigning for a purple candidate, and you see some come to a house with a yellow candidate yard sign. Are you even going to knock on the door? They've already made up their mind. They're not going to change it. Just move on. But under ranked choice voting, again, you know that you're not going to get their first choice vote, but you might get their second choice vote. And so it helps promote dialogue and helps promote different groups communicating with each other. I'm going to skip playing this video. It's just Betsy Hodges, former mayor of Minneapolis, saying the same thing. You know, there was relatively little elbowing and attacking because every candidate wanted to be the second choice of their opponent's supporters. We have research backing this up. This was a study published in 2016 looking at campaign civility. We see in non-RCV cities, about 25% of people said candidates spent a great deal of time criticizing their opponents, and only 12% said they weren't doing this at all. Whereas in RCV cities, that ratio is reversed. You know, only 5% said candidates spend a great deal of time criticizing their opponents. 36% said they weren't doing this at all. And so, yeah, questions about voter understanding. Are people going to get this? Is going to drive them away from the polls? People get it, and they still show up to vote. The number of ballots with errors on them is the same in a ranked choice election versus a plurality election. Like ballots that are spoiled or can't be used, it's the same. The turnout is the same in general elections in ranked choice versus plurality elections. So it doesn't scare people away from the polls. But again, remember that turnout is much higher in these general elections than either primaries or preliminaries or runoff elections. So effectively you get a higher turnout because everybody is making their full voice heard at that high turnout general election. Cost. I mentioned this before. Maine estimates about $750,000 additional expenditure for their first year for upgrades, $650,000 for every year after, which is a small fraction, 0.02% of the state's total budget. For Massachusetts, our estimates, it's about 59 cents per resident per year, so not a whole lot. About $3 to $5 million for the first year, which most voting machines are actually already compatible with this and would take very little changes at all, but there are some voting machines that would need to be upgraded. And then about $1 million additional every year thereafter, mostly just because the ballots are a little bit bigger, so there's more printing costs. So our campaign, again, I am with Voter Choice Massachusetts. We are a statewide effort. We have 9 regional chapters up and running all over the state. We really want to make this happen in Massachusetts. We've been growing very steadily since November 2016. Got a big spike of support in April. We've got 20,000 members and about 2,700 active volunteers. We've been raising money. Money makes things happen. So we've raised almost $100,000 from about 400 donors. We have some bills in the legislature. H2897, what we call the local option bill, that would make it easier for cities and towns to opt into ranked choice voting. Right now there's a number of barriers that are set up. They would need to recharter or do a home rule petition. With the local option bill passed, it could be changed just like any normal legal process bill. We also have H377, which would institute ranked choice voting statewide. We don't expect that to pass, so what we are looking at is a 2020 ballot initiative. We are really building up a lot of support in order to drive at that 2020 ballot campaign. So, ways you can help. First thing to do, sign up on our email list if you're not on it already. Can you pass that around to anybody who wants it? So this is just going to keep you informed on our campaign. We don't send out a lot of emails, maybe one every 2 weeks. That's the first thing to do. You can run a table at an event. If there's events that you go to on any regular basis, we're always out here trying to spread the word. You can make calls to activate our supporters. We need a lot of help. We have a lot of people that are interested in change. We do need help organizing. You can host a house party. This is a fun event that we've been doing. You just get all your friends together. I give this presentation or something similar, and we just, raise awareness. You can lead a meeting in your community. Thank you again, Mark, for doing this. If any of you involved in any other groups, we'd love to come speak to them. And as an RTC, we would love your endorsement. Thank you for your time. I will now take any more questions. Yes?
Back to the 2 House bills.
Yeah.
As far as the co-sponsors, the sponsors and the co-sponsors, how is it balancing out between Republicans and Democrats, do you know?
I do not know off the top of my head.
Do you have can you think of any names of any of the sponsors, just off the top of your head?
I know the local option bill was introduced by Mike Connolly, I want to say, who's a representative from Cambridge. But that's the only one I know off the top of my head.
Thank you.
I'm assuming Democrat?
Yeah.
Cambridge?
Yeah, that's what I said.
Yeah. We've gotten a little bit more reception from Democrats. I don't understand why, especially in Massachusetts. I would think Republicans would love this. But that's why I'm here. We want as much Republican support as we can get.
And why did you decide to go the state route as opposed to maybe start small with cities and towns and then work up?
So it's a good question, and I don't have time to give a really full, detailed answer. I think the shorter answer is we're doing both. We do want it to change at the state level. I think that would be the biggest impact, and we think, it's going to be tough, but we can make it happen. I've mentioned those local option bills. I think those would be great to pass. We obviously aren't going to come in and tell a city how to run their elections, but we can remove barriers and help educate cities in order to do it. So I don't remember if it's on here, but Amherst is going to be switching over to ranked choice voting soon, and we were very helpful in that effort. I'm from Malden. I've been talking all my neighbors' ears off about ranked choice voting. I would love to get them to switch. It would be much easier with the local option bill passed.
Okay, thank you.
We should get some of these to pass out at Park Day.
Yes, I was going to suggest. So we have an event called Park Day.
Okay.
September 9th, I think it is. It's one of the early Sundays in, first Sunday, so maybe it's a little earlier than the 9th, but in September.
Okay.
It's a great opportunity. Most of the town and some, a lot of people from other towns as well too wind up coming to the event. We try to hold a table there. There's a lot of other people that have tables for a variety of causes. It'd be great if you guys want to have a table there as well too. That's an
Yeah.
option.
Yeah, that'd be good.
And or we could have a table there as well.
Yeah.
I would recommend you guys do it because you guys can speak an awful lot more to it than we would be able to and answer people's questions.
From West Bridgewater, so a lot of people come.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Good time, yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of the politicians like to go there too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'll put it
right.
on our schedule. That sounds great.
The one that's going to jail used to come and give up. I won't mention his name, but.
I happen to be the secretary of the Taunton Republican City Committee, so I've texted my chairperson,
Mhm.
and I'll let you know
Great.
how that turns out, to see if they're interested in,
Yeah.
in having you come to one of our meetings.
Make sure, don't let me leave without giving you my business card. Make
Okay.
sure you got the info.
Yeah, I want to get that as well too. I got some, any information that you have, that I can send electronically, I
Yeah.
can most certainly send out to the rest of our members. We get more like 20, 25 members, so
Okay.
that'll extend that reach. Of course, it'll be on the West Bridgewater Cable Access Station eventually, once Ben has an opportunity to kind of put it all together.
Okay.
And so you'll get a little bit of a reach there. And again, contact information that could be put on that would be good as well too.
Yeah.
Perfect,
Let me
just like
leave
that.
this up here. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is our main contact info, voterchoiceatmaine.org. You can call us, you can email us, we are on Twitter. We take donations online. We always appreciate that. And yeah, whoever wants to help,